Three bikers walked into Johnson's gas station in Shadow Creek, Arizona, looking for trouble. They found a Navy SEAL. Instead, what happened next would expose a $100 million drug trafficking operation, dismantle a corrupt police department, and bring an international cartel to its knees. They thought they were intimidating a lone woman on a sport bike. Instead, they picked a fight with one of the deadliest combat veterans in U.S. military history, Captain Rachel Morrison, former Navy SEAL Team 6 operator, was about to teach the Desert Wolves motorcycle gang a brutal lesson about judging a book by its cover. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The afternoon heat shimmered off Highway 87 as Rachel Morrison guided her Kawasaki Ninja into Johnson's gas station. Red rock formations loomed in the distance, casting long shadows across the desert valley. 15 years of special operations had taught her to catalog every detail. Two dusty pickup trucks by the store, a security camera that hadn't worked in years, and multiple approach routes between the weathered gas pumps. Old habits died hard. The station owner, Joe Johnson, watched through the shop window as Rachel dismounted. His weathered face registered something in her movements, the way she positioned herself with clear sight lines to all approaches. 20 years as an Air Force par rescan had taught him to recognize a fellow operator. Rachel adjusted her leather jacket, carefully concealing the SEAL trident tattoo on her forearm. The nightmares from her last mission still haunted her, the classified operation in Guatemala that had gone sideways, the teammates she couldn't save. She'd chosen this remote route to clear her head, never expecting Shadow Creek to become anything more than a fuel stop. The station's bell chimed as she entered. Johnson nodded from behind the counter, respect rather than the usual curiosity in his eyes. Long way from anywhere, ma'am. Just passing through, Rachel replied, selecting a coffee cup. Her fingers instinctively traced the scar on her right hand, a souvenir from close quarters combat and Kandahar. The peaceful moment shattered as three motorcycles roared into the lot, their engines deliberately loud enough to rattle the store's windows. The Desert Wolves had arrived. Their leather cuts displayed the gang's signature emblem, a snarling wolf head with blood-red eyes. Marcus Blade Rodriguez led his lieutenants into the store, their boots heavy on the worn linoleum, his scarred face twisted into what he probably thought was a charming smile as he surveyed the space. His gaze lingered on Rachel for a moment too long before turning to Johnson. Old Man Blade called out, his voice carrying an edge that made the air temperature seem to drop. Sheriff Cooper says you missed this month's Business Association meeting. He's concerned about your commitment to the community. Johnson's hands trembled slightly as he sat down a coffee pot. Been busy with inventory, Blade. You know how it is. Sure, Blade replied, moving closer. But see, when the sheriff calls a meeting, it's not really optional. Shadow Creek's growing change is coming. Everyone needs to participate. Rachel watched the exchange silently, her coffee forgotten. She cataloged details with practiced precision. The tall one, Snake, carried a knife in his boot. The mountain of muscle they called Tank had a pistol poorly concealed under his cut. More importantly, she noted the fresh track marks on Snake's arms, the chemical smell clinging to their clothes. This wasn't just about protection money. Maybe, Johnson said, his voice stronger now. The sheriff should focus on actual law enforcement instead of running errands for thugs. The store went dead silent. Blade's fake smile vanished. What did you just say to me? Old Man Snake and Tank moved to flank Johnson, but Rachel was already in motion. 15 years of training took over as she grabbed Blade's wrist, applying precise pressure to nerve clusters that made his fingers spasm open. He said. Rachel spoke softly, but her voice carried throughout the silent store, that the sheriff should do his job. Blade tried to pull away, but Rachel's grip was iron. The other bikers reached for weapons but froze at her next words. I wouldn't. Your draws are slow, and you telegraph your intentions like amateurs. By the time you clear leather, this will be over. You have no idea who you're messing with. Blade snarled. Rachel smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Actually, I do. Marcus Blade Rodriguez, dishonorable discharge from the Marines in 09. the Desert Wolves have been running protection rackets across 3 counties. But lately you've moved up to bigger operations. Those chemical burns on Snake's hands aren't from cooking meth. You're running something much larger through the old copper mine. The color drained from Blade's face. Tank's hand twitched toward his weapon, but Rachel's grip on Blade's wrist tightened, making him gasp. Here's what happens next, she continued. You and your friends leave. We forget this happened, or we find out just how many bones I can break before you hit the floor. Your choice. For a long moment nobody moved. Then Blade raised his free hand. And surrender. All right, we're leaving, but this isn't over. Rachel released him, stepping back to give them space to exit. It can be. That's up to you. The 3 bikers backed away, their attempts to look menacing undermined by the way Blade cradled his wrist as they mounted their bikes. He shot one last glare through the window. Who are you? Johnson whispered as the motorcycles roared away. Rachel sat back down, taking a sip of her now cold coffee. Just someone who's seen enough bullies for one lifetime. But as she watched the Desert Wolves disappear into the desert heat, Rachel knew Blade was right about one thing. This wasn't over. She just painted a target on her back. If her instinct were right, the chemical traces and cartel connections pointed to something much bigger than biker gang intimidation. The Desert Wolves were just the tip of the iceberg, and Shadow Creek's corruption ran deep into the red rock that surrounded it. Johnson placed a fresh cup of coffee in front of her. Whatever happens next, the former PG said firmly. You're not alone. Rachel nodded, already running through scenarios in her mind. She'd chosen this route, looking for peace, but sometimes peace had to be fought for. If it was a fight the Desert Wolves wanted, they were about to learn why Navy SEALs were the last people you wanted as enemies. No, Rachel agreed quietly, watching heat lightning flicker in the distance. I'm not alone, and neither are you. Not anymore. Late evening, shadows crept across Johnson's gas station as Rachel Morrison sat in the back office cleaning her Glock, and with practiced precision, the encounter with the Desert Wolves played through her mind as she analyzed every detail: the chemical burns on Snake's hands, the coordination of their movements, the mention of the copper mine. Pieces of a puzzle she hadn't expected to find in Shadow Creek. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It's open. Joe Johnson entered, followed by a woman in her 30s wearing a deputy's uniform, though her badge was concealed. Deputy Sarah Martinez. Expression was grim as she closed the door behind her. Word travels fast in small towns, Martinez said, declining to sit. Heard you had a chat with Blade and his boys. You just painted a target on Joe's back, and yours. Rachel continued, reassembling her weapon. They were already targeting him. The protection racket's just a cover for something bigger. I know, Martinez replied, pulling out a thumb drive. Been tracking unusual ship through the old copper mine. Multiple vehicles. Professional security. Scheduled like military operations. Way too organized for the Desert Wolves. Rachel inserted the drive into Johnson's ancient computer. Satellite imagery showed convoy patterns, guard rotations, and something that made her blood run cold. Shipping containers modified for human transport. They're moving people through here, Rachel said quietly. The drug operations just camouflage for human trafficking. Johnson hands clenched. Sheriff Cooper has to know half the department's on regular patrol near the mine. Cooper's bought and paid for. Martinez spat, along with the mayor and half the city council. I've been building a case for months, but anyone who gets too curious has a habit of disappearing. Rachel studied Martinez. Why? Show me this. Because I watched you handle Blade. Your different military background, special operations, if I had to guess. More importantly, you're not connected to anyone here. No pressure points for them to exploit. A series of headlights swept past the station, engines rumbling in the desert night. Rachel moved to the window, noting 3 black SUVs with darkened windows making a slow circuit. They're watching already, she observed. Professional surveillance, not biker gang muscle. Martinez nodded. Blade must have made some calls. Question is, are you staying or moving? On Rachel's phone vibrated a message from a secure number she hadn't seen in months. Satellite shows major cartel activity near Shadow Creek. Multiple high-value targets. Ghost team available if needed. Say the word, Mike. The pieces were falling into place. The Desert Wolves were just local muscle for something international in scale. The cave systems around Shadow Creek made perfect staging areas for moving product and people across the border. I'm staying, Rachel. Decided, but we do this smart, Martins. I need everything you've gathered on Cooper and the local operation. Joe, you know this town's history. I need to know every back road, every cave entrance, every place they might be using. They'll come for you, Johnson warned. Once they realize you're a threat, they'll send professionals. Rachel smiled coldly, checking her weapon one final time. Good. Let them come, but first we need to talk to someone who sees everything in this town. The locals might keep secrets from law enforcement, but they talk freely in front of waitresses. Martinez's eyes widened. Maria's diner. She's been here 40 years, knows everyone's business. Then let's pay Maria a visit. Rachel replied, sending a short text to Mike Ghost Team on standby. Recon only. Shadow Creek's about to get interesting. As they prepared to move, Rachel caught her reflection in the office window. The quiet warrior she'd been trying to become would have to wait. Shadow Creek needed the operator. She used to be the one who specialized in dismantling criminal empires piece by bloody piece. The desert night grew darker as they pulled away from the station, but Rachel's mind was clear. Phase 1 was simple: gather intelligence, build allies, and let the enemy think they were in control. Soon enough, they'd learn what happened when they brought their cartel operation to the wrong town. In the distance, more vehicles were moving toward the copper mine, their headlights cutting through the darkness like predatory eyes. They thought they were hunting her. They had no idea they were about to become the prey. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maria's diner sat at the heart of Shadow Creek, its neon sign casting a red glow across the nearly empty parking lot. Rachel positioned her motorcycle with a clear view of both exits, noting the security cameras, these ones functional covering the entrance. Martinez parked her unmarked car in shadows, while Johnson took position near the back door. The bell chimed as Rachel entered. At this hour, only 2 customers occupied booths, both wearing Desert Wolves cuts, both trying too hard to look casual. Maria Ramirez, the silver-haired owner, looked up from the counter. Her eyes showed recognition, not of Rachel, but of what she represented. Coffee? Maria asked, already pouring a cup. Best in Shadow Creek. Rachel slid onto a stool, positioning herself to watch the bikers in the mirror behind the counter. Heard you make good apple pie too. Only person who makes better pie is my grandmother, God rest her soul, Maria replied, her voice dropping. Though lately business has been slow, too many new faces in town scaring away the regulars. The bikers stood, making a show of leaving cash on their table. One brushed deliberately close to Rachel as they left, trying to intimidate. She didn't bother turning around once their motorcycles roared away. Maria's demeanor changed. Deputy Martinez called ahead, said you might have questions about our little town's recent changes. Rachel sipped her coffee. It was excellent. Tell me about the mine. 3 months ago, it was abandoned. Then the Desert Wolves started providing security for a new investment group. Now there's traffic, all-night trucks, expensive SUVs, shipping containers, the kind of business that needs lots of lookouts. Martinez joined them, badge now visible. How deep does it go? Maria, deep enough that my cousin Rose's daughter disappeared last month. Police said she ran away, but I saw her get into one of those black SUVs. They're using the old smuggling tunnels, the ones that run all through these hills. Rachel's phone vibrated. A message from Mike's satellite confirms tunnel network, multiple heat signatures, professional security, rotation, cartel patterns, mash golf operations. They're moving product north. Rachel mused, using the caves to hide from border patrol drones, but they needed local infrastructure, someone with authority. Cooper Martinez spat. He was a good cop once, then his brother got involved with the Wolves. Now half the force are either on the payroll or too scared to act. Maria placed a slice of pie in front of Rachel. 2 days ago, I overheard Blade talking to someone on the phone. Something big's coming. They're clearing the old warehouse district, posting extra security. Mentioned someone called the surgeon arriving to inspect the operation. Rachel went still. The surgeon, the name she'd heard in Guatemala. The mission that went wrong, that cost her teammates their lives. A cartel enforcer known for making examples of anyone who interfered with operations. When 3 days they're having a town Meeting that night, mandatory attendance for all business owners. Martinez. Cover everyone in one place while they move whatever they don't want seen. Rachel's mind raced, planning multiple scenarios. Maria, I need blueprints of the tunnel system, original mining surveys, anything that shows access points. My late husband was a mining engineer. I might have some old maps in storage. Suddenly, Johnson's voice crackled through their earpieces. Multiple vehicles approaching. Professional formation SUVs and bikes. Rachel moved to the window. 4 black SUVs, led by Desert Wolves riders, were making their way down Main Street. The lead vehicle stopped outside the diner. Maria, your back rooms still connect to the old Prohibition tunnels. The older woman smiled. Doors behind the storage shelves tunnels lead to the church basement 3 blocks east. Martinez, get Maria out. I'll draw their attention. Rachel checked her weapon. Joe, be ready for company like old times. Johnson replied, the former page's voice steady as Martinez and Maria slipped away. Rachel took another bite of pie. It really was excellent. The bell chimed as heavy boots entered the diner. Told you this wasn't over. Blade's voice carried across the empty room. Boss wants to talk. Rachel didn't turn around. Your boss can make an appointment. I'm finishing my pie. More footsteps entered. Professional operators by their movement patterns, not cartel muscle, but private military contractors. This was about to get interesting. Not a request, lady, one of the contractors spoke, though I got to admit you've got stones. Not many people stand up to the Desert Wolves in their own town now. Rachel turned, studying them with cold amusement. This isn't Wolves territory, not anymore. Shadow Creek belongs to its people. You're just parasites who haven't figured out you're dying yet. Take her. Blade ordered. Rachel smiled. Sometimes the best operations start, Ed, with letting the enemy think they had the upper hand. As the contractors moved forward, she calculated angles, positions, and the exact pressure points that would cause maximum damage with minimal effort. Time to show them why Navy SEALs were the apex predators in any environment, even a small-town diner. The first contractor never saw the coffee pot coming. Rachel launched it in a fluid motion, scalding liquid and glass, creating instant chaos as he staggered back. She was already moving. Years of close quarters combat training taking over. The second contractor reached for his concealed weapon, but found his arm locked in a joint manipulation that sent him crashing into Blade. The third made the mistake of telegraphing a wide punch. Rachel slipped inside his guard, using his momentum to drive him through a booth. Professional security, she taunted, flowing between them like water. You move like mall cops. 2 more contractors burst through the door, these ones openly carrying weapons. Rachel dove behind the counter as bullets shattered coffee cups and punctured the pie display. The air filled with cordite and the smell of spilled coffee. You're trapped, Blade called out. No way out except through US. Rachel pulled a small device from her jacket, a present from her Ghost Team days. Actually, she replied, you're the ones who are trapped. She triggered the device. Every light in the diner exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the room into darkness. The contractor's tactical lights snapped on exactly what she'd anticipated. In the dark, they became perfect targets. Moving silently, Rachel emerged behind them. The first contractor went down to a precise strike to the brain stem. The second spun, firing wildly, but she was already gone. The third found himself disarmed and unconscious before he registered her presence. Blade backed toward the door, drawing a knife. What the hell are you? Someone who's dealt with better cartel puppets than you, Rachel replied, her voice seeming to come from everywhere in the darkness. Tell your boss, the real one, not Cooper, that Shadow Creek isn't his playground anymore. The surgeon will cut you apart. Blade snarled, still trying to locate her. He's dealt with operators before. Rachel's voice hardened. Guatemala, I know. I was there before Blade could respond. She struck 3 precise hits that left him gasping on the floor as police sirens wailed in the distance. She retrieved her phone, snapping photos of the contractor's IDs. Mike would be able to trace their connections. Johnson's voice crackled through her earpiece. Local police incoming. Cooper's leading them personally. Maria and Martinez clear safe at the church. Martinez is coordinating with her trusted deputies. Rachel surveyed the unconscious contractor's. Time to disappear. Meet me at fallback point Alpha. slipped into the back room as Cooper's vehicle screeched into the parking lot. The tunnel entrance was exactly where Maria had said, decades of dust hiding its existence from casual observers. As she pulled the hidden door close, Rachel could hear Cooper's angry voice above, "Find her, I want this whole town locked down." The tunnel was narrow, but navigable, clearly part of Shadow Creek's Prohibition-era smuggling network. Rachel moved silently through the darkness, her mind already processing the night's intelligence. The surgeon's impending arrival changed everything. He'd recognize her, know what she was capable of. Her phone vibrated. Mick again. Satellite shows major movement at the mine. They're accelerating operations. Ghost team standing by. Not yet, she replied. Let them think they're in control. I need 48 hours to set the board. The tunnel emerged in the church basement. As promised, Johnson was waiting with Martinez and Maria, who had spread aging blueprints across a table. Cooper called an emergency council meeting. Martinez reported their spooked blade wasn't supposed to engage directly, as especially not with contractors present. They've exposed their hand too early. Rachel studied the blueprints. The tunnel system was extensive, connecting multiple buildings throughout town, perfect for moving product or for staging a counter operation. Maria, I need every detail about this town meeting. Security, attendance, everything. The older woman nodded. They're requiring all business owners present using the old community center single main room. 2 exits. They'll use it as cover. Rachel mused. Keep everyone contained while they move something big through the tunnels, or someone. The surgeon, Johnson added, coming to inspect his investment personally. Rachel traced routes through the tunnel system. Then we'll prepare a proper welcome. Martins, how many deputies can you trust? Absolutely 4, maybe 5. Get them ready, but quietly for now. We let Cooper think he's got control of the situation. Rachel's eyes hardened. In 3 days they'll learn why you never bring cartel operations to a town protected by a seal. Outside, police vehicles prowled Shadow Creek's streets, searching for a ghost. But in the church basement, surrounded by allies and intelligence, Rachel Morrison was already planning the operation that would rip the cartels out of Shadow Creek by the roots. The surgeon was coming, bringing his expertise in terror and torture, but he'd find more than small-town prey waiting in the desert darkness. He'd find a predator who'd learned from Guatemala's mistakes, one who now hunted cartel operators for sport. Dawn crept over Shadow Creek's red rocks as Rachel surveyed the town from the church bell tower through high-powered binoculars. She watched Cooper's deputies establishing checkpoints on major roads. Their positions were sloppy, leaving multiple approach routes uncovered. Amateur worker phone displayed satellite imagery from Mick showing increased activity at the copper mine. Trucks moved in and out with military precision, while armed guards patrolled in organized patterns. These weren't desert wolves. Their movements showed professional training. Target count. Johnson's voice came through her earpiece as he watched from his station's roof. 30 plus at the mine, Rachel replied. Mix of contractors and cartel security. They're fortifying key positions, expecting trouble. Martinez joined her in the tower, carrying fresh intel. My deputies confirmed 3 more missing persons cases in the past month. All young women. Police reports were misplaced on Cooper's orders. Rachel's jaw tightened. Human trafficking. Just like Guatemala, the surgeon's specialty was breaking people, turning them into commodities. She'd seen his handiwork firsthand, found what was left of his victims. They're using the old mining tunnels. Martinez continued, spreading out updated maps, multiple exit points across 3 counties, perfect for moving people without detection. Rachel studied the tunnel system. These routes all converge here. She pointed to a central chamber, natural choke point, the main storage area. Maria's voice added as she climbed the tower steps. My husband called it the cathedral, biggest cave in the system. That's where they're keeping them. Rachel's tactical mind processed the information. We'll need eyes inside, direct intel on guard rotations. Security systems already handled. Maria smiled. My nephew works maintenance at the mine. Started 2 days ago. Not even Cooper knows he's my family. How soon can he get us details? Tonight. He's on evening shift. Rachel's phone buzzed. Mike again. Facial recognition confirmed 3 former ops contractors at the diner. Blackwater alumni, serious players. They're bringing in more muscle. Rachel news preparing for the surgeon's arrival. Speaking of which, Maria, what's the status on the town meeting? Mandatory attendance confirmed. They're posting armed security at all entrances, making a show of force. Martinez leaned forward. Perfect time to hit the mine when their attention is divided. No, Rachel replied, they'll expect that we need to be smarter. She pointed to the tunnel maps, these old prohibition routes they run under the community center. Maria nodded. Connected to half the basements in town. My husband mapped them all, then we use their own tactics against them. While they're watching the streets, we'll own the underground. Rachel keyed her radio. Joe, how's our equipment cache? Got the gear you requested. Night vision, tactical comms. Breaching charges. Your friend Mike has impressive connections. Rachel allowed herself a small smile. Ghost team always came through with supplies. Martinez brief. Your trusted deputies, basic op plans only, no details. Maria, get your nephews intel to me the moment it comes in. We've got 48 hours to prepare our welcome for the surgeon. A convoy of black SUVs rolled through town heading toward the mine. Rachel tracked them through her binoculars, noting faces, weapons patterns. These weren't just security contractors, they moved like covered operation specialists. They're getting nervous. Martinez observed all this firepower for a small town. They should be nervous. Rachel replied coldly, they just don't know why yet. Her phone vibrated with another message from Mike. Coast team in position, perimeter surveillance established. Say the word maintain. Observation only. She replied, we do this right, they won't know we're here until it's too late. In the distance, more vehicles approached Shadow Creek. The enemy was gathering their forces, fortifying their positions, preparing for a siege. But they were preparing for the wrong kind of fight. They think size and strength win battles, Rachel said, packing away her binoculars. But in this environment, against this type of opponent, victory goes to whoever controls the shadows. She turned to her allies. Time to show them why Navy SEALs specialize in underwater operations, because that's where the deadliest predators hunt. As morning fully broke over Shadow Creek, Rachel Morrison began transforming the quiet desert town into an elaborate trap. The surgeon was coming to inspect his operation, never suspecting he was walking into an ambush. 3 decades of special operations experience in the making. The storm was gathering. Soon it would break over Shadow Creek like a tidal wave, washing away the corruption that had taken root. And when it was over, the cartels would learn a valuable lesson about choosing their territory more carefully. Rachel crouched in the darkness of the tunnel system, her night vision revealing the intricate network of passages carved into Shadow Creek's bedrock. Maria's nephew Carlos had come through with detailed intel, guard rotation, security systems, and most importantly, confirmation of 23 captives held in the cathedral. 3 main guard posts. Rachel whispered into her tactical calm. Surveillance cameras at key junctions, motion sensors covering primary routes, but not the maintenance shafts. Carlos's voice replied from his hidden position near the mine entrance. They think they're too narrow for anyone to use. Rachel smiled grimly. SEAL training had included far tighter space bases. Locations of the sensor control boxes, Junction B7, and the main security office. They're running everything through a closed network. Martinez's voice crackled through the sea. Rachel, we've got movement. Up top, 3 more SUVs just entered town, different pattern than the contractors through her thermal scope. Rachel watched heat signatures moving through the tunnels above, disciplined, professional, but with a distinctive aggression in their movements. Cartel wetwork teams getting everything cleaned up before the surgeon arrives. Her phone vibrated silently. Mike's latest update, facial recognition, confirms 2 known cartel assassins. These aren't standard security, they're cleaners. Rachel keyed her cowl. All units maintain distance, let them think they're alone down here. She switched channels. Joe's status on the church basement equipment's prep. Johnson replied, Ghost team's gear is something else, makes my old PG kit look like toys. Maria, how many tunnel access points are we sure about? 17, confirmed the diner owner. Responded from her makeshift command center in the church. Most buildings from the Prohibition era have connections. The community center's basement has 3 separate routes. Rachel moved silently through the darkness, mapping the tunnel network in her mind. Every junction, every corridor would become part of an elaborate maze, one designed to separate and isolate cartel forces when the time came. Her thermal scope picked up more movement, a group of desert wolves. Escorting someone through the main tunnel, the figure moved with authority, studying the operation's security. With professional scrutiny, new player Rachel whispered, male 6-foot military bearing conducting security review. That's Victor Carlos, confirmed the surgeon's advanced man. Snaz been here since yesterday, upgrading security protocols. Rachel's jaw tightened. She'd encountered Victor's work before. He'd been the surgeon's security chief in Guatemala. The mission that went wrong, that cost her teammates their lives, had been compromised by his counter-surveillance expertise, getting additional readings. She reported multiple heat signatures in the cathedral consistent with Carlos's count of captives. Martinez's voice was tight with controlled anger. Those are our people. They're holding daughters, sisters, members of this community. Not for long, Rachel promised Carlos. I need detailed routes to the control room. Victor will have changed security patterns, but he can't change the tunnel architecture. As Carlos transmitted the data, Rachel's phone lit up with another message from Mike. Surgeon's private jet filed flight plan. Arrival in 36 hours. Ghost team tracking secondary cartel movements across 3 states. This is bigger than Shadow Creek. It ends here. Rachel replied, have the team ready. When we move, we'll need to hit everything. Simultaneously, she switched back to the main channel. Martinez, coordinate with your deputies. I want staged vehicle accidents ready to block major roads when we give the signal. Maria, get word to the trusted business owners. When the shooting starts, they need their people clear of the streets. Already done, Maria confirmed. My diner will be the only place open. Perfect observation post for the community center. Rachel began her silent retreat through the tunnels, cataloging positions for the charges that would reshape this underground battlefield. Victor was good, one of the best in the business at security operations, but he was preparing for a frontal assault, a direct confrontation he wasn't ready for. Shadow war for an enemy that could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and vanish back into the darkness. He wasn't prepared for a SEAL operating in her element, underwater, underground, in spaces where traditional military doctrine meant nothing. They're sealing their own tomb. Rachel said quietly, they just don't know it yet. Above ground, Shadow Creek continued its normal routines, but beneath the surface, the pieces were moving into place for an operation that would rip the heart out of the cartel's human trafficking network. The surgeon was coming to inspect his kingdom. He'd find instead a hunting ground prepared by a predator who'd learned from past mistakes. This time there would be no escape, no compromise, no mercy. The underground war for Shadow Creek's soul was about to begin. Sunset painted Shadow Creek's rocks blood red as Rachel finalized the operation plans in the church basement. Satellite imagery from Mike covered one wall, tracking cartel movements across the region. Tunnel maps occupied another, marked with patrol patterns and sensor locations. The third wall displayed photos of the missing faces of Shadow Creek's daughters, whose families thought they'd never see them again. Victor's increased patrols, Carlos reported through the comm. Foreman teams rotating every 30 minutes. They're using different routes each time. Rachel studied the patrol patterns. Martinez's deputies had documented he's good random rotations, overlapping fields of fire, no predictable gaps. She smiled coldly, but he's still thinking like Spetsnaz fighting the last war. Her phone lit up with urgent intel from Mike. Surgeon's jet departed cartel airfield, multiple escort vehicles moving north. Shadow Creek police scanner shows Cooper ordering all units to clear major roads. Time frame, Johnson asked. Cleaning weapons with mechanical precision. 6 hours, a replied. They'll want him on the ground before dawn. Maria, status on the community center. Desert wolves are setting up security checkpoints, metal detectors, armed guards, making it look like normal precautions for a town meeting. Martinez entered carrying fresh intelligence. Cooper's called in every deputy, even the ones not on his payroll, wants a show of force. When the surgeon arrives, Rachel nodded, analyzing the enemy's preparations. They're creating a security bubble, multiple layers, all focusing outward, expecting trouble from outside, while we're already inside. Johnson added, understanding her strategy exactly. Rachel activated the 3D tunnel projection Mike's team had generated. They fortified 3 defensive rings outer perimeter. She pointed to the police checkpoints mid-layer at the mine entrance and inner security around the cathedral. All those resources protecting against external threats. Martinez observed, leaving them vulnerable from below. Rachel loaded fresh magazines, each movement precise. Victor's good, but he's fighting. Conventionally establishing hard perimeters, clear fields of fire. He's preparing for an assault, but that's not what we're giving them, Maria said, catching on. No, Rachel's voice hardened. We're giving them chaos, confusion, death from 1,000 cuts. She activated her tactical calm. Ghost 1 status in position, came the whispered reply. Teams distributed across all major access points, ready to move on. Your signal. Rachel turned to her allies. Final assignments. Martinez, your deputies hold back until the shooting starts. When it does, block every road out of town. Johnson, you'll coordinate with Ghost team on perimeter control. No one gets out once it begins. Maria, your diner stays open. We need eyes on the community center. Carlos, maintain your cover at the mine. The moment they move the captives, we need to know. She checked her watch. 5 hours until the surgeon lands, 6 until the town meeting. Once that starts, her phone buzzed urgently. Mike's message was brief. Problem, surgeon diverted, landing in 2 hours at private airstrip. They're accelerating everything. Rachel's mind shifted instantly, recalculating change of plans. They're moving up the timeline. She grabbed her gear bag. Martinez, get your people in position now. Maria, Carlos, maintain observation. Everyone else execute operation under tow. We move in 90 minutes. That's not much time, Johnson warned. They're getting nervous. Rachel replied, checking her weapons one final time. Victor's pushing the schedule because he senses something's wrong. Good. Nervous people make mistakes. She studied the faces on the wall one last time. The missing women whose families had lost hope. In 3 hours, the cartel is going to learn why you don't bring your operations to a town protected by America's elite warriors. Shadow Creek streets were quiet as night fell, but beneath the surface, invisible forces were gathering. The surgeon was coming early, rushing to inspect his operation. He'd find instead a trap. 3 decades of special operations experience in the making. Remember, Rachel told her team, we're not just fighting for Shadow Creek, we're fighting for every small town they've targeted, every family they've torn apart. Tonight, we show them why Navy SEALs are the apex predators in any environment. She headed for the tunnel entrance, disappearing into darkness that would become her hunting ground. The calm before the storm was ending soon. Shadow Creek's underground war would begin, and deep beneath